Toronto, A Tale of Two Cities. I'm David Williams. During this difficult time, so many families are without money for food, rent, or mortgages through no fault of their own, becoming victims of corporate plunder, facing eviction, homelessness, and who are soon forgotten, enabling and enriching corporate plunder by means of unjust confiscation, expropriation, repossession, denial. But first, I want to mention the Holocaust and express my sorrow for those who were victims of Nazi prosecution and horrific genocide of millions of Jewish people. Many in our society, so many, refuse even to recognize that the Holocaust happened. These are the people that are spreading hate, racism, hatred in our society, and in their efforts to do so are totally distorting history. The Holocaust did occur, and it was one of the monumental historical crimes against humanity. Above it is a photograph of thousands of innocent Jewish people, men, women, children, babies, being herded onto boxcars, on trains, to carry them to the concentration camps, the extermination camps, where the gas chambers waited. I also want to talk about the horrors of slavery and the extermination and genocide of the North American First Nation person, which also are subject to denial by so many who spread hate and foster racism in our society. There's so much that is untold involving the slave trade for 300 years in the southern United States. How the African man, woman, child, baby were kidnapped from their homes in Africa, brought to the United States on slave ships. How the weak and the frail were cast into the ocean on voyage, and when in America, worked for the rest of their lives in the cotton fields. How in 1830, when slavery was abolished in the British Empire, and African slaves became abundant in the United States, southern United States, it became more profitable for the slave owner to starve his slaves to death and replace them with new slaves from Africa. It is my opinion, based on my life experience, that everything is rigged against people or persons of color, regardless wherever they may be or wherever they live. For example, the Toronto mayors will be given the authority to veto council decisions, prepare the budget, and appoint and remove high-ranking staff members, such as the city manager. Toronto is a city where the majority of people are persons of color. Soon, the majority on the city council will also be persons of color. A 2/3 majority will be necessary to overrule the mayor. Let's take a moment to pause and examine what this means. In Toronto, on Wards Island, which is part of the City of Toronto, there are almost 271 persons, white people, I repeat, white people, at least the land or the homes they live in for less than $1 a day for a 99-year lease. Some of the homes are worth millions of dollars. These people don't pay property taxes. The City of Toronto property taxes. If anyone who was not a resident of Wards Island went to the island for recreational purposes, it's a public park, they would be told to leave the island, Wards Island, on the last ferry before day's end. Recently, the Ontario Conservative government reduced the minimum wage from $15 an hour to $14 an hour, while at the same time canceled any form of rent control on buildings that became rental in 2018 and after. And this is very serious. If a tenant left his or her apartment unit because of canceling the rent controls, and that the landlords now could charge whatever they wished for their units to the people of Toronto, most of whom people of color, the money that was circulating in Toronto's community that supported the restaurants, small business, etc., disposable income, now went to the landlords, causing thousands, no, tens of thousands of small businesses to go bankrupt. There was nothing left. There was nothing left for the people. If a person in Ontario now is working 40 hours a week, and now the minimum wage is again $15 an hour after Doug Ford reduced it, that person would take home approximately $1,700, $1,800, $1,900 a month dollars. How in the world could that person feed his family or clothe and feed her family if she is a single parent? How can that person pay the landlord $2,600, $2,700 a month rent now that the rent controls are gutted? What has happened with the gutting and the cancellation of rent controls? Where the economy of the small business sector throughout the City of Toronto is now flat and insolvent because the disposable monies in Toronto were sucked up by the landlords in the form of high rents and high profits. everywhere throughout the city of metropolitan Toronto. But if you're one of the persons, almost 270 of them, living on Ward's Island, where your rent or lease involves only $1 a day, not to worry. You're okay. But what about the millions of others? There are thousands of towns and cities, municipalities too, in Ontario. In each one of those thousands, there is a council where every member of council has an equal vote with the mayor. And a majority of the council members, after a majority vote, cannot be overruled by that mayor and that municipality. Cannot be vetoed by the mayor. But Doug Ford and his Conservative government passed legislation that in Toronto and in the city of Ottawa, which has the second largest population of people of color in Ontario, that the mayors in both those cities can veto a majority decision of council members, and that the veto of the mayor can only be overturned by a majority of a two-thirds vote of members of that council. There are 26 members of the Toronto City Council, including the mayor. If it takes a two-thirds majority to overrule a mayor, it means simply that the mayor has 17 votes, which is two-thirds, and the members of the city council, who represent millions of people in Toronto, most of whom are people of color, have 9 votes. My God. How could we ever let this situation happen? Or the question is more urgently, how can we turn aside and pretend we don't see discrimination against the children of Toronto who are trapped in the inner city? Ward's Island is a park belonging to the people, all the people of Toronto, the city of Toronto, not just 271. Everyone in Toronto, regardless of race, is entitled and has a right to go to Ward's Island, camp on the island for 1 day, 2 days, week, month, under the supervision and administration of the city of Toronto. No one can deny that. And if the Toronto Council, in a majority, vote to correct the injustice happening on Ward's Island, the mayor cannot, perhaps I should say, well, yes, I will, cannot be permitted to veto it. We have a right to our park. No one can deny the citizens of Toronto, the majority, whom are people of color, justice. In conclusion, if anybody wishes to contact me, I can be contacted through my website, www.keepingalive.com. There is an email link directly to my home, and I respond to all questions and all support. I thank you for your attention. God bless you. David Williams.